Okay, so welcome everyone. As I said, thank you for joining us today. Nigel and I will guide you through a focused exploration about managing high conflict behaviours, and this is specifically tailored for family mediators. We'll be alternating slides throughout the session with the help of the wonderful Julie Perry from the FMC, who's there in the background. And our aim is to give you practical, immediately applicable tools while keeping the theory concise. So please use the Q&A function for questions today rather than the chat function. The chat function's been disabled, and we will answer questions at the end if we have time. We've got quite a lot to get through. So, introductions first. I'm Elaine Richardson, and I run my own online mediation practice working with families across the UK and beyond. I'm a solicitor, collaborative practitioner, and accredited child inclusive hybrid family mediator. In addition to my practice, I support the profession as a professional practice consultant, PPC for mediators, and also as a family law supervisor for lawyers. I'm a trainer. I train lawyers and mediators in domestic abuse, safeguarding, and high conflict for resolution. And I'm the co-chair of the National Dispute Resolution Committee for resolution. I'm a Scottish Law Society certified trauma-informed lawyer, and I've also been trained by the High Conflict Institute of America, both as a coach and in high conflict mediation. Over to you, Nigel.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. Well, it's always lovely to work with Elaine, but quite difficult to follow her impressive CV. But we're really pleased that you could join us today. I undertake various court and non-court based roles as a solicitor, arbitrator, mediator. I trained as a mediator back in 1997, so quite a long time ago, when there wasn't a great deal of mediation around in those days. We've come a long way since then. I think one of the joys of being a mediator is we're part of a community in which we all share that want to help people and help families get themselves sorted out in the best way. So when we bump into one another, even if it's after a long period of time, I met someone on Friday I'd not seen for years, which was really nice. That always feels good, and I think is really special. As Elaine said, what we really hope today is we can give you some useful thoughts and ideas and tips, because we know that some of the work we do is challenging. We're sure you'll have your own thoughts and ideas too. So please do use the Q&A to post those if you would like to do so. So we're going to take you through a few slides. The first slide is going to be dealt with by Elaine, and I'll just pass you back to her now. Thanks, Jeannie.
So imagine this scenario in a mediation. One person insists on a win-lose outcome when a cooperative solution could be found. This is the essence of high conflict. And it may not be obvious, especially at the start of a working relationship, but high conflict behaviour has a tendency to come out eventually over time or in a crisis. Being aware of high conflict traits and behaviours matters in mediation because it can, amongst other things, derail communication, create pressure on the mediator, and cause proposals and the mediation process itself to fall apart. So by identifying the pattern, we can anticipate challenges and create structures that keep mediation safe and productive. So the session objectives today are to cover what defines high conflict behaviour. We will explore some underlying causes and how high conflict shows up. Finally, we'll offer practical strategies for managing high conflict. Over to you, Nigel, and next slide, please, Julie.
Thanks, Elaine. So if we talk first principles, the first one, the one that's most important of all, is to do no harm. We know this is so important and applies, I think, to all the work that we do. Of course, we need to keep people safe, and we must keep our assessment as to whether mediation is suitable for our clients. We must keep that in mind throughout the course of helping them and keep it under review. And I think that probably means we should check in with the clients before every meeting because we know things can change. This presentation is not about domestic abuse per se, but we must remember that high conflict behaviour, which we are going to be talking about, might be indicative of domestic abuse. Of course, before we all meet together, we will have undertaken our initial separate assessment meetings. So safety must always come first. It's our guiding principle and the most important consideration to apply to all our actions and all the work that we do. Of course, we all want to help people, but we can't help everyone. And sometimes the conflict is just too great. But remember, even if we conclude that maybe because of the level of conflict, mediation is not suitable just now, it may be later when things have calmed down. And of course, nowadays we can issue a court certificate that does actually provide for people to start a court process that runs parallel to mediation. And I think that can be really helpful. In the past, mediation tended to break down and people went to court, and mediation was never considered again, which I don't think is especially helpful. If there has been some bad past behaviour, then we do need some acknowledgement, and we need to keep that in mind. Going forwards, and likely to be issued sometime in early February, there will be new guidance and an excellent toolkit coming from the FMC, which will help us with our assessments and also now makes clear that we may still be able to mediate even when there has been past domestic abuse. Of course, we need to be careful, but survivors of domestic abuse should have that option. But of course, all the more important that we should proceed with care. That guidance is likely to be released early to mid-February time. It's really important and we must follow it. It is absolutely not a tick box exercise. Remember too, when we're dealing with conflict, it's important not to stigmatise people. What clients really need and deserve is our better understanding so they feel confident in us as the mediator and also confident in the process and feel confident that we will respond appropriately and support them and when necessary signpost them to other services. And of course, we're there to facilitate difficult conversations. That's the whole point of mediation. The easy conversations, people can do those themselves. What we're there to do is to help them have the more difficult conversations. Remember too, importantly, we're not diagnosing people, nor do we want to label them, nor, importantly, should we share our insights as to what we think about their behaviour. Of course, we may be wrong, and sharing with them absolutely won't help. In fact, it might well trigger conflict between us and our clients. I know at least a couple of mediators where that has happened, where the mediator has challenged the clients in frustration and then suffered the backlash. So definitely don't share our thoughts and definitely don't put a note on the file. We can have a working hypothesis of what or whom we might be dealing with, and then we can revisit that hypothesis and keep it under review. So we're not diagnosing. We're going to keep an open mind, consciously thinking about our insights and have a working hypothesis. What might we be dealing with here? But don't share. In the words of Henry Brown, don't marry your hypothesis either, but keep it under review. The good news is that high conflict behaviour generally can be anticipated and expected. So in that sense, it is predictable. We know as mediators, we don't judge people, we don't cross-examine, we're not there to fact-find or tell clients what to do. And I think we should tell clients this. I think it can really help them better understand the process and indeed our role. Conflict can arise from frustration. So the more we tell clients about this process, the better. An important thing to keep in mind as well is to manage our own feelings before we respond to conflict. So if we're having to deal with confrontation or aggression, or indeed lots of criticism, which might be directed to us too, or at least it might feel that way, we really need to take a step back and reflect before we respond in a considered way. We definitely don't want to respond in kind, which will inevitably make things worse. We think that can easily happen uh, when we feel frustrated or feeling a bit cross about things that are being said. It's so easy to get drawn into the conflict. Often, it might feel that the frustration or anger is directed towards us, but often that's not the case. So, really important to remember to give ourselves time and space to gather our thoughts before we respond. And I think also really importantly to make sure that whatever our thoughts, that we do not criticize the clients. And finally, and I think so important to remember, if the conflict is heightened and prolonged, we probably have the wrong people in our room right now. And we need to explain that mediation doesn't feel the best place for them just now, and explore other options for them to create good endings. We know that good endings matter, and we'll look at that a bit later. So remember, if not now, maybe later. I can think of lots of examples of breaks in mediation where people come back later and the process can work really well. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Nigel. And just to pick up on that, of course, just to repeat again, high conflict is not a diagnosis. It's a term that we use to describe a recognizable pattern of behavior. So around 10% of the population consistently show these traits. These individuals relate to the world through rigid, extreme conflict patterns. They struggle to manage their own emotions, repeatedly blame others, and see themselves as the victim, which, of course, in their mind, justifies behaviour that most people would see as inappropriate or disproportionate. We know that high conflict individuals escalate disagreement rather than resolve it. They repeatedly blame others for situations they inflame themselves and have little or no insight into their own contribution. So when people or processes don't align with how they believe things should be, they feel threatened very quickly. And a helpful way to describe this pattern is persuasive blaming. It's important to remember that these individuals are very unlikely to change. And as Nigel said, it's therefore a waste of time to try to give them insights into their behaviour. As mediators, our role is not to label or diagnose people, so we'll keep saying that, I think, throughout the presentation today. Of course, they don't wear a badge, and our job is to recognise the pattern of behaviour and adjust the process accordingly. So this is an overview of high conflict behaviour. And what defines it is that the behaviour increases conflict rather than reduces it, and it repeats across different situations and relationships. It affects everyone the person comes into contact with. And importantly, it's not always loud or obvious. High conflict behaviour can be subtle, strategic, or emotionally contained, which makes it particularly challenging. In disputes involving high conflict personalities, the behaviour pattern matters more than the issue itself. In other words, the issue is not the issue. There are 4 core traits that we consistently see. So first, blaming others. High conflict individuals externalize responsibility. They genuinely believe the problem lies entirely with someone else. You might hear statements like, "You made me like this," or "If only you hadn't done that." Their primary communication style is blaming others while positioning themselves as the victim. Second, all or nothing thinking. This is rigid, black and white thinking with no room for compromise or nuance. Their position is non-negotiable and highly polarized, and this keeps people stuck and it blocks problem solving. It often presents as apparently rational logic, but it contains cognitive distortion. For example, unrealistic expectations of total vindication by courts or refusal to consider any shared responsibility. The third point is unmanaged emotions used to influence others. This may look like emotional intensity that is wildly disproportionate to the issue, or alternatively, calm but calculated emotional manipulation. Suppressed anger, anxiety, and emotional pressure all fall under this trait. Either way, emotions are being used to control the interaction. The fourth point is extreme behaviour. So this includes actions, spoken or written, that most people would not engage in. These behaviours are driven by emotional dysregulation, fear of losing control, and a need to dominate or punish others. All of these traits show up predictably in mediation through escalation, crisis responses, rigidity, and breakdowns in agreements. Interim arrangements often become unworkable or ambiguous. This behaviour can be deeply exhausting for professionals, and Nigel is going to talk about well-being at the end of the session today. That's why early recognition matters. High conflict behaviour can appear contradictory, charming yet volatile, persuasive yet rigid, highly emotional or intensely anxious, not always angry. These behaviours can easily draw professionals in emotionally, but it's important to remember logic and persuasion don't resolve high conflict situations. What you experience is chaos, stress, and confusion, while the high conflict individual simply repeats lifelong patterns. Many others have tried to change them and failed. Awareness protects your neutrality and prevents emotional drain. Finally, as Nigel said, and we keep coming back to this, mediation may not always be the most suitable process. Risk is fluid and must be kept under review to ensure safety. If mediation needs to end, how we end it matters, because poor endings risk making things worse, and Nigel will also speak to that on another slide. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Elaine. So we do think it's really important that we keep in mind what are some of the underlying causes of conflict or angry behaviour. I think that helps keep us human and keeps us in touch with our clients who we're trying to help rather than judging them by what we see and what we have to deal with. So without going into too much clinical theory, we're not clinicians, we think it's helpful to know a bit more about attachment theory. I'm sure that's a term you've heard of. So the idea that early attachment disruptions and or maladaptive personality traits can influence behavior, and this can in time contribute to high conflict behaviors. Remember, again, we must not diagnose people or try to explain the behavior to the client. Our task is to work with the behavior that's in front of us and respond constructively. The theory and the term attachment disorganization stems from John Bowlby's research in the 1950s. John was a psychiatrist and psychologist when he noted the impact on children in hospital when they did not see their parents even for just 1 or 2 days. Their behavior changed, and the children found it quite distressing and difficult to connect and relate to other adults or indeed other children. Biologically, most of us are predisposed to want to form relationships with others, especially those who make us feel safe and comfortable and loved. So we form attachments with our principal carers as children. Usually that will be our parents. And if those attachments are disrupted, then this does affect us emotionally and later in life can really impact on new relationships. So at one end of a scale, we have secure attachments, which is ideal. The other end, disorganized attachment, which may be problematic and often is associated with forms of abuse, delayed development, trauma, or neglect in childhood. So we do need to have some understanding and keep this in mind. The other thing we might be dealing with is someone with a personality disorder. I'm not going to spend any time on that today because it's quite a complicated and detailed subject. But again, I think the more we can, the more knowledge we have of some of these important aspects, the better we are prepared to help people. Or we might be dealing with traits of both. And sometimes I think it's preferable, rather than think about personality disorders, to think about personality traits. Everyone has a combination of traits with functionality at one end and dysfunctional or maladaptive at the other. So if people are inflexible or have maladaptive and persisting traits, that can cause significant functional impairment or distress and may constitute a personality disorder as well. It can trigger or create high conflict and may not be easy to manage. Our traits fall short of disorders, so it's important to keep in mind that distinction, but they are just parts of the human condition. We all have traits. Why is this relevant? Well, because it can impact on empathy and reflective function, and that in turn can trigger high conflict and frustration, because we might be dealing with somebody who actually has no empathy and no understanding of how the other person might be feeling, an absence of reflective function of how their behavior might make the other person feel. So it's really important to have some understanding. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Nigel. So we're going to move on to strategies now. So, because knowing all of this, what do you do now? And our experience is that usual strategies often fail in high conflict situations. What's required is a different approach, one that combines flexible thinking and clear ground rules. It's often counterintuitive and the exact opposite of what you feel like doing. The strategies we're introducing over the next 4 slides are designed specifically for high conflict. And the good news is they also work with reasonable people. So let's turn to the first point on this slide, the first strategy, maintaining boundaries, boundaried empathy. And this is one of the most critical skills in high conflict work, maintaining these strong professional boundaries. So Henry Brown, the wonderful Henry Brown, who trained me and Nigel, describes this as boundaried empathy. So being empathic without becoming over-involved. And what does boundaried empathy look like in practice? Well, first, formal policies and procedures trump informality. So when in doubt, be more structured rather than less. Be clear from the outset about your role. I can do A, B, and C. I can't do D, E, or F. This clarity can and should be delivered with empathy. Second, gently resist pull-in behaviours. So high conflict clients may use charm, bullying, or guilt to draw you in as a new attachment figure. Your task is to stay warm but not hooked. Third, don't try to be liked. Seeking approval makes manipulation easier. You can remain respectful and empathic without needing validation. And fourth, don't rise to provocation. That never works. Nigel and I often talk about this concept of not working harder than your clients. So I think that's a good guide. So I think next on the slide is the amygdala hijack, and really linking with those boundaries and to understand why they matter. It helps to understand what happens in the brain under stress. So this is very brief. The brain has 2 hemispheres. The left brain handles logic, language, planning, and reasoning. So we think lefty logic. The right brain manages emotion, intuition, and survival responses. So we think righty-fighty. And the amygdala acts like a smoke alarm, constantly scanning for threat. And that's the bridge between the two. So when a person feels under threat, the amygdala is triggered in milliseconds. You don't have control over that. The right brain takes over, the left brain goes offline, and fight, flight, or freeze is activated. So the body prepares for survival, not problem solving. In other words, the right brain can be faster, but not as smart in a crisis. So why this matters in high conflict work? In escalation, the person in front of us is neurologically unable to reason. And from a professional perspective, logic and explanations won't land. Reasoning too early can increase escalation. High conflict clients are often operating from the right brain, and professionals tend to stay in the left brain, so that creates a communication mismatch. Added to this, of course, emotions are contagious. So even when we're calm, we can absorb the emotional intensity of a high conflict person, leading to increased tension, reactive responses, loss of professional calm, and unintentional escalation. This is why self-regulation is not optional in high conflict work. So don't mirror high conflict behaviours. We know that reasonable people mirror the high conflict behaviour in an effort to defend themselves. So, key learning point, the immediate task is not resolution, it's regulation. And a core skill is to shift from the right brain to the left brain. So, our goal is to help the person move back into thinking mode. Effective strategies include avoiding emotionally charged topics early, briefly acknowledge the emotion, so I can hear how upsetting this feels, use a calm tone and a slower pace, keep language simple and concrete, redirect to structure and tasks. Let's look at the dates you're proposing. Focus on facts, lists, and practical steps. And take breaks when intensity rises. Even a pause or a drink of water can help reset the nervous system. And once the brain is calmer, decision making becomes possible again. So, summary of that: stress shuts down logic, emotion overrides reasoning, regulation comes before resolution, and our role is to contain, calm, and redirect, because progress starts once thinking returns. So, staying calm, the next point on the slide, what to do in the room. Unfortunately, and ultimately, you've got to be aware that managing high conflict means managing your own anxiety. And Viktor Frankl put this beautifully, a Holocaust survivor. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So, your task is to create that space for yourself and for the participants. Slow things down. Everyone needs thinking time, some more than others. Use simple phrases to buy time, such as, I'm hearing strong feelings. Shall we pause and return with a specific task? Breathing is a powerful way to maintain equilibrium. Even a simple breathing technique helps. So breathe into the belly, not the chest, hold briefly, release slowly. A regulated professional helps regulate the room. And finally, on this slide, communication skills. Clarity is essential. High conflict people may unintentionally or even intentionally distort information. So be explicit about roles, rules, and process. Keep clear notes, provide written summaries, be very clear about costs and how they may escalate. And of course, this links back directly to boundaried empathy, the first point on the slide. Clear, calm, transparent communication reduces misunderstanding and instability. Over to you, Nigel.
Thanks, Glenn. So one of the things we need to do as mediators is manage emotions, all sorts of emotions. And we know this is difficult. Different emotions will affect us all differently and changing from time to time according to what's going on for us in our own lives. It's sort of moving sands, if you like. Managing emotion can be disconcerting at first as well. So new trainees coming into mediation for the first time can find this slightly disconcerting because it's probably something they've not had to manage with two people in the same room. They may have had an emotional client in front of them and taken time to understand needs to be sorted with them. But now the dynamics change because we have two people in the room, and that's much more challenging. And can continue, by the way, because if you talk to even very experienced mediators, most, if not all, will still tell you they do get anxious about managing emotions. We know it's not easy to sit with conflict, yet we do have to do so because in mediation it is universal. Managing anger in particular is difficult. And another good tip from dear Henry would be don't take it personally. I had a couple of anecdotes for you, which I might come back to later if we have time, but I'll pass over those just for the moment. I think one of the things, though, to be key is to be aware of what might trigger our own emotions and feelings. Of course, we're professionals, but also human, and we're not generated by AI, at least not yet. In fact, clients need to see our human side. We're not perfect. We can model behavior, and we should not be afraid to try things with clients. And of course, sometimes we will get things wrong too. And I think when we do that, and we can tell them what we're trying to do and how we're trying to help them, clients will understand this. That's fine. That's okay, as long as we do no harm. So we can explore and be curious. We know that our emotions can impact on us in a negative way as well, when we might feel overwhelmed or indeed out of our depth, which of course we're trying to avoid. But it can also help us when it comes to dealing with empathy and understanding. But remember, too, sometimes we can over empathize, and that can affect our impartiality. So we do need to be careful. Remember, we're not using why questions. We're not going to be saying to a client, "Why are you so angry or cross?" That is not likely to go down well. Telling someone they seem to be angry is a judgment call, which they really don't need, at least not to be told in an obvious or overt way, and especially not in front of someone else. They probably know. We can and should try to reframe conflict, to follow John Haynes's idea that yes, conflict's going to be present. What we need to do is to try to find something positive and be constructive and not be seen to criticize. I think really importantly, we should not try to ignore anger or high conflict in the room and hope it will go away. It won't. Ignoring it is likely to make things worse. Angry people generally need and want to be heard. So it's really important that we take the time in a managed and safe way to make sure that they do feel heard and understood. It doesn't mean we're agreeing with them. I think the last 2 points on the slide are important. Patience is key. Patience is the key to better understanding. And with better understanding, we are best placed to help our clients. So really allowing clients time to share and taking our time. We're not there to fix people just within a couple of meetings. So making sure we manage expectations. We know sometimes people come to mediation having been told, go to mediation, it'll be sorted out in a couple of meetings. It's just not realistic. If we don't manage expectations, frustration can creep in, and frustration can spill over into conflict and an increased risk in the mediation breaking down. And then, as Elaine says, that in turn can lead to more angst and frustration and make things worse. Finally, on this slide, the client's worldview really does matter. So their worldview based on their childhood or upbringing and education, their life experience, needs to be heard and understood as far as we can. It may seem or be irrational and may need further understanding and exploration. It doesn't mean we agree, but if we just reject their worldview or dismiss it out of hand, that is likely to trigger more conflict, or indeed suggestions that we're not being impartial. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Nigel. So we're on to our third slide about strategies. And the first point here is pre-mediation coaching. So consider using pre-mediation coaching to build skills, particularly in high conflict cases. One widely used model comes from Bill Eddy of the High Conflict Institute in America, and it focuses on 4 core skills. So firstly, managing emotions, staying calm and focused. This is something that you can have an expectation that your client will do. Secondly, flexible thinking. So not just preparing one proposal, but preparing a number of proposals, alternatives. moderating behaviour, especially in difficult moments, and checking yourself, noticing triggers and reactions. So, informal coaching may involve confidential meetings with a participant to help them understand proposals, anticipate reactions, and stay settlement focused. The emphasis is on self management, not changing the other person. We help participants expect frustration or anger when they hear views they don't like and prepare for that in advance. So, again, simple techniques like breathing exercises can help regulate emotional spikes. Encourage flexible thinking, not one demand, but several possible proposals. Encourage moderated behaviour. Respect in and out of sessions, no interrupting, using I statements and asking for breaks when needed. A useful metaphor here, I think, is to go slow to go fast. So being like a mountain guide, break the journey into stages, pace your client, stop to rest, and periodically look back to acknowledge progress. You help by setting expectations of self-restraint. Secondly, on this slide, face saving, and that's critical in high conflict environments. Sun Tzu, a famous Chinese military tactician, famously said centuries ago, build your adversary a golden bridge to retreat across. So, in mediation terms, make it easy to say yes. High conflict impasse usually arises for four reasons. Firstly, it wasn't the high conflict person's idea. Their interests feel unmet. They fear losing face, and things are moving too fast, making no the safest option. A golden bridge reframes retreat as progress, moving away from a rigid position towards a solution without humiliation or loss of status. Third point on this slide is hybrid mediation. So, traditional family mediation assumes people can sit together, share information openly, and regulate themselves. That model wasn't designed for high conflict participants. Hybrid mediation, which was developed by Henry Brown in 2018, works far better in these cases. It combines the best elements of family and civil mediation. Participants usually sit in separate spaces, allowing confidential discussions with the mediator. They can express concerns, rehearse offers, and receive reality testing without triggering immediate reactions from the other person. Lawyers can support clients in real time, and other professionals, divorce coaches, financial neutrals, therapists can all be involved. From my experience, online hybrid shuttle mediation is the most effective format I've used for managing high conflict behaviour. It's flexible and allows for a bespoke process for each family. And there's a useful recording on the FMC website if you'd like to explore this further. And that was a session that was conducted yesterday for Family Mediation Week by Karen Walker and Suzanne Kingston. Fourth point on this slide, and the last point, is to remain professionally curious. So don't let anything go by unnoticed. Pay attention to your discomfort. Some high conflict individuals are dangerous, and uneasy gut feelings can be early warning signs. So trust your instincts, including the sleep at night test. Instinct isn't mystical. It's accumulated knowledge, experience, and pattern recognition operating below conscious awareness. We're often better to notice what people don't say or do than what they do. Departures from a person's usual behaviour also matter. So avoid believing a high conflict individual's narratives, especially their stories about other professionals. Don't get hooked. Professional curiosity protects your neutrality, your safety, and the process itself. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Elaine. So final slide on strategies. We can make progress using small steps. It's the how do you eat an elephant question. The answer is small bite-sized chunks. So manageable bite-sized chunks, small steps are good and work well. Going at the client's pace. not rushing. If they're rushing too much and trying to skip too many stages, then we need to bring them back and actually tell them what needs to happen to make this work for them. So managing this process. So building one block at a time to make sure the foundations are put in place and solid. We know with good foundations in place, we can make good progress quite quickly, as Elaine said. If we skip the foundations, we will quickly be back at square one, which can feel frustrating for everyone and can cause conflict. We can share this with the clients too. Tell the clients what we're doing. They will buy into the process if they understand the steps they need to take. We're used to driving this car. We do it all the time, but they don't. We need clients to help them maintain focus on resolution outcomes as well. Remind them when things get difficult, remind them what they shared with us when they first came into mediation to tell us what they hope to achieve, obviously without breaking confidences. But you told me you hope to get everything sorted without going to court and hope to achieve that in the next 6 months. Remind them, that's what you wanted to achieve. And that can really help shift the conflict into the more logical, rational, reasoned, lefty logic side of their brain. We need reflection and time to talk through consequences as well. I think saying to clients, helping them to talk through what particular steps or plans or proposals might look like. Help me understand is always a good question to put to our clients. What are the other choices, alternatives, or options, and what do they look like? If it looks as though the process might break down, to look at that too. So saying to clients, of course you have a choice. You can walk out of mediation. You can stop the process at any time, as can I as mediator. The problem with walking out is nothing gets sorted. And you do need to understand you won't be in court in 2 weeks' time getting things finalised. So talk people through what are the implications of walking out. I can recall one such case where there was a walkout and the next day I get a phone call saying to me, Nigel, can we book in for another session? Yes, of course, it's not a problem. So it's not uncommon. And I think telling people that sharing what we know with the clients can really help them understand. Finally, on this slide, endings, good endings really matter. As Elaine said earlier, taking the time to sort out good endings for people. We take our time to assess people at the start of the mediation and check whether mediation is going to be the best option for them. We should take our time to give people good endings. If we're not going to continue with mediation, what do the next steps look like? What are your choices? Provide details of who they can contact for advice or further information, support, or guidance. They may have come to mediation putting their last hope in the process. And when it feels like it's going to break down, that is not a good place for them to be. So really trying to help them think about what happens next is so important. Thanks, Julie.
So we want to summarise the key takeaways for you. Firstly, we say that recognising the high conflict pattern early is important, structuring your process clearly, pacing the work, using boundaries consistently, and looking after yourself. These are the important things. Remember, you don't have to fix the behaviour, and you won't be able to. Your role is to guide the process safely. And I hope that we've given you a compass and map to help you apply the strategies in practice. In terms of looking after yourself, I'm going to hand over to Nigel now for the last part of our presentation today, self-care for mediators.
Thanks, Elaine. So Elaine and I, we beat the drum on this all the time. You are important as mediators. We need to look after ourselves. It's so important. We know that working with high conflict can be exhausting. Emotions can affect us. Persistent tension, unpredictability can wear everyone down, not least us as professionals. It's hard, and we know it's challenging at times, but it's also such a good way to work. But if we want to be the best we can be, we do need to look after ourselves. So putting in place our own personal boundaries, recognizing what cases we think we can and can't take on. We can't be everything to everyone. And I think we need to recognize that and don't be afraid to call on others for help. Finding ways to debrief with others, colleagues, PPC, supervisors after a difficult meeting is really important, and really recognize when a case is affecting us. Protecting our well-being protects our professional effectiveness. Getting used to sitting with the discomfort. It is difficult at first, but does get easier. It's never easy. As Elaine's son, Matthew, a barrister at Coram, once shared with me quite recently, it's the challenges and difficulties of our work that make our job worthwhile and interesting. And of course, Matthew is right. Diary, manage your diary. You hear stories of people who tell you they've got 6 mediations in the diary in a day. Is that really going to be achievable and doable? I suggest not. I think we really need to be careful. This is not easy work, and dealing with people back to back is not easy on us, and I'm not sure we're doing the client the best service either. Self-awareness really matters. What are the things that affect us? What are our strengths and weaknesses? And engaging in reflective practice. At the end of a meeting, just to think about how did that go? What went well? What didn't go so well? How could I improve that? What could I do better? But also, it's about being good enough. We can't be perfect all the time, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up. Managing meetings and in-betweens, obviously managing meetings is so important, but in-betweens as well. What do clients need? Do they need the next date in the diary to help them? Do they need a timetable? Often I think they do, because if we let clients drift too much, that can lead to further frustration, and things can be harder to sort out. Hot drinks really do matter. They have a physiological effect on us and help us calm down, and I think we should always make them available. Beware the rescuer in all of us. We want to help people and rescue them, but actually that's not our role. Our role is to try to help them sort themselves out, but we're not there to rescue people. PPC supervision is so important. There are many benefits. So I'm sure you've got good PPCs. We have to meet with our PPC for 4 hours a year, but we can do more, and I think we probably should. So we really hope that you can try some of these strategies going forwards, and above all, take care of you. And final thought, I think, on this slide anyway, is that Henry's wise words once again, don't beat yourself up. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening and for coming along today. We just wanted briefly to turn to questions. So I think the first question, Nigel, we need to deal with is, what is the sleep at night test?
Oh. Well, I think the way I would describe that is sometimes we take on cases that we worry about endlessly, and we literally can lie awake at night, can't we, worrying about that case, what's going on, what am I doing it the right way, am I managing it, what needs to be done next. And sometimes if we're in that place, it might well be that we've taken on something that is just too much. And that's when we need to be aware and think about, what help can I get with this case? Who do I need to talk to? Talking to somebody, we know, it came up on Friday actually on the training, that when people talk to you, if you're the PPC, and talk through a case with you, they go away with solutions for themselves when the PPC has said nothing. Because just sharing and knowing somebody's there to help you and sharing it in that way can be very empowering. So we all want to be able to sleep in our bed at night, or if we don't, it's not because we're worried about our client cases. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Nigel. Melissa, thank you for your kind words. In terms of other high conflict training courses, Nigel and I present a much longer version of this course for resolution. So you could have a look on the resolution calendar to see when the next course is coming up. And you've also asked, how would you explain to participants of the consequences of walking out of mediation? But since you dealt with that, Nigel, can I hand over to you to give the answer to that question?
The example I had was a couple of years ago, and the wife suddenly got up and said the husband had said something, and she said, "Oh, sorry, Nigel, I'm not staying and listening to this." And I can't even remember what he'd said, but it really touched a nerve with her. She went to the door and said, "Sorry, Nigel, I can't stay," and she was gone. So I stopped the mediation. Stopped. I went to try and find her, but she had gone. She'd got in her car and driven away. Next morning, I get a phone call saying, "Oh, Nigel, can we book in for mediation?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can. That's fine." And we talked through about, look, if you need to take a break or something is said, mediation is emotional, of course. So I think it's telling people that this can be difficult sometimes. Managing expectations, the more we can do that, the easier it becomes, because then we can remind people, do you remember I told you that this can happen? It's normal. It's okay. Do you want to take a break? Should we have a cup of tea? It's humanizing and helping people navigate those flashpoints, if you like. Because also, quite often people do think, oh, if I'm not in mediation, I'll go to court. I'll see you in court. And they think they'll be in court in 2 weeks or a month. Well, of course, they won't. They don't necessarily know that. So I think giving them information without, we've got to be impartial in the information we give as well. We're not trying to influence. We're not telling to people, mustn't go to court. That's not our role. But we're giving information and choices to people in an informed and impartial way. Then they can make their choices.
Yeah, absolutely, Nigel. We're educators, aren't we? And that's so important, isn't it? And it's, I think, really important to front load the information as well, so that you can do as Nigel said, which is, do you remember I said so and so? That's really important. And I just think as well, to add to that, the importance of allowing people to change their minds in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the end. And sometimes as mediators, of course, the frustrating part about our job is we don't necessarily see the endings, but we know that we've done really good work with the separating couple. And that hopefully is something that carries on with them.
We do
Um,
know, don't we, that sometimes, we can say to people, look, right now, it just feels too difficult for you, but I'm here. If you think going forward, I can help, I'm still here as a
mm,
mediator. And I think quite often people do come back and then they can have difficult conversations, but it just feels a bit easier
yeah,
because
it's that emotional readiness, isn't it? It's
they
so
don't want to get
important.
caught, so
Yeah,
they need to sit down, actually.
yeah.
Emotional readiness,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's vital. And I think also going back to what you said about the court form, that's a really important point, Nigel. That the court form now, the form that we sign as a mediator to say that they've been to a MIAM or a mediation meeting, it recognises that people can mediate in parallel with going to court. And very often that can happen in a situation involving high conflict. So again, allowing people to change their mind.
Actually, the court timetable can help because they know they're trying to resolve things before they've got the court date and they really don't want to be in court. So I think it can work incredibly well for people. In the past, mediation broke down, signed it off, they went to court, you never heard from them again. And I think clients probably ended up in court. They didn't particularly want to be there, but because the mediation had broken down, they had nowhere else to go. I think we've moved on from those days, which is for the better, I think, because this
Yeah.
should be clients and their families. What
Mm.
sort of them, so.
And I always explain to clients in a MIAM that even if they go to court and it's their choice, of course, please remember that they can come back to mediation. Again, this is giving people options, isn't it, Nigel, about the future, giving them something to take away.
Giving them hope, isn't it? I'm still here.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, okay, thanks, Elaine. That sounds really good.
yeah, giving them hope. Okay, on that note, we're going to leave it because we've run out of time. Thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate it. It's a pity that we couldn't see you all and have a chat, but in some ways, of course, it's less frightening for me and Nigel. Okay, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.